So there's a lot of attention that needed to be diverted back and forth between where are the errors we need to find, what are the client's applications doing, and how can I help the team better understand or be alerted that things are happening. We moved to AppSignal probably about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago now, from a different service. And one of the great things about having all of the client applications in AppSignal is you can do a lot of things with dashboards, which I'll go over here in my presentation. Today, that was my introduction. We're going to be looking through the monitoring clutter section, which I just mentioned, kind of going through the different applications and monitoring them. I'm going to talk about some out-of-the-box defaults that are really big wins if you understand them and can go through and set up. We're going to look at a case study to give a real example of how we use AppSignal to solve a problem. And then we're going to look through actionable alerts and setting them up. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A as well. The AppSignal dashboard is quite large, but it gives you a really clean way to look at things that are important to the application. So on the top there, you can see, if I have 5 minutes to check on something just to make sure things are running smoothly, there are a couple ways to do it, but one of them is just to look at the dashboard. It's this error rate based on the last 48 hours, what I expect for this application, and then is there any interesting things in the open error list as well. We'll go over all these sections. It looks like a lot. 1 second. The other way to do it, though, is to look at pinned applications. So, for example, for Planet Argon, I have all of the production applications pinned for all of our clients, which allows me to, on the very first page I open for AppSignal, look at, okay, is the throughput, is the response time what I expect to see every single day? We have some clients that have very large throughput and response time is a little bit slower. We have some clients that have less. And this is a good, just first gut check in the morning to say, is everything running smoothly? Do I see any giant spikes in exception rate or response time or throughput based on what I see every single day? And if yes, you can click on them, dig deeper, and go back to this dashboard screen we just saw earlier to get more information. So that's kind of, as a project manager, that's something that I wanted to solve right away because I'm not technical enough to understand what the errors are themselves, but I am technical enough to see a giant spike and say, that doesn't seem right. Let's look at the 48 hours. Let's look at the 30 days of graphs to see, are these spikes regular or are they anomaly? Or suddenly we have a huge spike in traffic on one page. Is that expected? Is it an error? Stuff like that. Out of the box, dashboard will give you a couple of dashboards. AppSignal will give you a couple of dashboard options. The overview dashboard is what we were looking at here, which is just a giant overview of that application and everything it does. But it'll also give you automatic dashboards that are pre-made based on the kind of technology you have in your application. We are looking at Ruby on Rails applications right now. Ruby on Rails uses Action Mailer, Active Job, and then Ruby VM metrics are some out-of-the-box dashboards, and those will help you dig into certain key elements of your application that you might have an error in. And we'll actually look at Action Mailer in the case study right now. So here, case study was one of our clients has a mailer system, which is what sends emails and notifications that kept crashing. And we couldn't figure out when it happened or why it happened unless somebody reported it to us that they weren't getting emails. This client had a lot of traffic, had a lot of orders for their products, which is great, but those orders are emails. The order confirmations are emails, and they started noticing that this system would crash. In this case, is a server cron job that would crash, and then nobody would know about it until the next morning or perhaps the end of the next day if they weren't looking hard enough. And so it seems like an easy problem to solve. We have a pretty clear indication of 0 emails going out. When can we track that and see, get alerted rather to when no emails are going out? Okay. So if you don't know, emails in this case are cron jobs. They're sequenced in order of when they arrive to go out, meaning if I click order now, my email goes in a sequence below the last person, etc. And then they get sent out in a queue They all go out. And so what happened was there was a large number of emails stacking in a queue and they weren't prioritized correctly. And then they would crash the queue. They would just overload the system and the server we had set up and not be sent out because the service crashed. Now, what does this look like in AppSignal? Okay, so as I mentioned before, we have an Action Mailer dashboard. Action Mailer sends our emails. This was automatically created by AppSignal. We didn't do anything to set this up. It was already there based on what they found in our application already in Rails, Ruby on Rails. And you can do certain things like, okay, I don't know what Action Mailer does exactly, and I don't know what deliveries are exactly, but I do know what a giant blank spot looks like. And so this is a really obvious indicator that we have a very consistent, amount of service and colors here in this graph, and then a big blank spot, and then it came back online. What happened in that blank spot? I don't know. Well, in AppSignal, we can do something called time detective. And so you can hover over that blank spot, for example, and lock it in, meaning that the graph won't continue to move. You just lock it there. And you can see that there's zero password instructions going out, zero sign up emails going out, zero successful messages going out, and zero contact form emails going out. And so clicking on the time detective button, it'll open a larger menu, which will look at certain things. Like in this example, performance I have pulled up here, and you can see there's a couple of different actions in the performance that are pretty slow for what we want, and we can dig deeper from there. And so one of the things I like about AppSignal is that it gives you a big overview, and then if you want to, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper in to look at what's actually happening. So based on that last screen, sorry. So I went here, time detective opened up. I wanted to see one of these that was slow. I clicked on that link, and now I'm in here, which is the samples page. So narrowing down to samples. From before, I'm looking at large data, looking at like a bunch of events happening, and then I want to narrow down to the time I want to look at. Okay, here there's something wrong. Okay, let's look at who exactly had something wrong. So samples are individual instances of this error happening. So like, for example, you can see like every couple seconds, couple minutes moving in this sequence here. So samples, yeah, you can drill down, drill down, drill down, and look at really, really specific things. Like here, I'm looking at the user mailer, the email for change password email. It's a background job, which I know I have problems with. And here I have individual durations and samples for the jobs. Uh, you can look at this in two ways in the big list I just showed, but they also provide graphs for individual errors. And so I can see in this individual error that I have a pretty steady performance, meaning these are going out pretty quickly every couple seconds. That's nice. And then, oh no, there's a big spike. It's 15 seconds for this email to go out. That's a problem. Let's look deeper. Again, you can mouse over the graph, open the time detective in that graph, and look deeper at the samples. And now you can see change password email. It's like almost 19 seconds to go out, which for non-developers doesn't seem like that long. For a developer, that's a very long time for an email to be sent. So one of the ways you help capture this and then alert the team about it automatically is using what's called anomaly detection. And so we've caught an error. We've seen that this big spike happened. It's irregular. It's an anomaly in the data. And we want to, every time that happens, alert the team that it happened. And then they can go and investigate, look at the samples, look at the graphs and see, is this a problem? Do we need to fix it immediately or can we wait to fix it depending on what we got going on? And one of the ways you do that is through anomaly detection. This is the new trigger function. So you're setting a trigger to catch the anomaly and then send an alert. So I know something is happening. The trigger is that something happened. The graph went really tall. Now I want to alert the team. So narrowing down makes it super easy to create custom triggers. You can look at things called namespaces, which I'll get into in a moment. You can look at, I know this happens pretty regularly. Let's give it a couple of minutes warm up and a cool down, meaning don't alert me right away. If it resolves itself, don't alert me at all. It's all good. You can add a description and you can actually attach it to a dashboard as well so that those alerts come in a sequence that you can see when they started, when they ended, and do some investigation there. So here I've set some really basic things, and you can look at the spikes in the graph to determine what you want to alert on. Like if I were to alert at 400 milliseconds, for example, I'd get alerts all the time. It's pretty regular that something hits 400 milliseconds, but 1 second is irregular. So if I set to 1 second, I catch better errors. AppSignal also does a lot of work to suggest triggers to you. So one of the things I like about that is that a lot of the stuff that's really routine, really basic, they'll look at your data and your graph coming into them and say like, okay, you definitely want some of these really basic alerts to go out. Like error rate is above 20%. Most apps should have that, right? It's very basic. Your error rate starts to increase, especially after deployments. You got a problem. And then you can look at other things like slow actions over 500 milliseconds, which is what we talked about a minute ago, and then some disk usage things that they suggest based on this application specifically. And those will change as you start to add more errors and more integrations. Another thing that I wanted to mention here is namespaces. And so when I talked to AppSignal about this maybe a year ago, they mentioned to me like, yeah, one of the ways you can narrow down the alerts you're getting or narrow down the data you want to see is by creating namespaces. They automatically create two namespaces in most cases, one for the website and one for the background side, depending on how your application is set up. But you can also be very specific about namespaces and create them based on different actions in the application. So, for example, if I know that I really want to monitor closely the checkout process for a website when a customer goes through to buy an item, I really want to know everything that happens in that sequence. I can set up in the code a namespace with AppSignal and then reference the code blocks that I wanted to monitor specifically. And that block will now be an option in namespaces. And namespaces can be attached to anything. So you can add namespaces to the overview page. So maybe I just want to see orders and logic in the overview page, or different graphs that I make myself, which is really cool. We haven't dug into that too deeply. In this case, you can see I have an API. We added that because I have a very large API that is sometimes unreliable from a third party, and I wanted to monitor that very closely to track any errors. Best practices for setting up alerts. Keep alerts to only what is needed. It's very tempting to set up a bunch of alerts and just be like, alert me for everything. What happens when you do that is that it creates a lot of noise in an email or a lot of noise in a channel, and people start ignoring it. Not because they want to, but because there's a lot. And so it's like I'm not going to read 60,000 alerts in a Slack channel. It's just not going to happen. So I would say if you're creating alerts, try to think about like what are the most critical things for me to know right away and respond to, and keep that only to what you need. Use defaults for general alerts. Like I mentioned before, they set up a lot of defaults. You can customize those defaults after you implement them to be very specific. That'll get you 90% of the way there. Keep alerts specific. Get down to the issue you're trying to track, create an alert for it, and don't be afraid to delete alerts once you resolve the issue, or set an alert for what's called first in deploy or first in occurrence after resolution. So you've resolved it, that's great. The next time it occurs, it'll start this alert again, which is cool. And then create a namespace, which I just talked about, to narrow down specifically on issues. This is what an alert looks like in Slack, by the way. AppSignal sends it to Slack and it says, blah, blah, alert occurred in the backend production app and this namespace web. And it gives you an example of the alert there and the path as well, which is interesting. We also use uptime monitoring for all of our applications in AppSignal. And this is a good way to set up quick checks for anybody on the team to look at. To say like, hey, I think I'm having a problem with the staging server. Let's take a look at the uptime monitoring page. We can see everything is no known issues. Everything is good. I know that there was a small issue here. Maybe I can look into that if I want to, but it's running smooth now. So that's great. You can also set these up for clients if you'd like. They're very nicely designed pages and pretty easy to understand. So no big technical needs there. And that was kind of my big thing. I wanted to show you one more thing though, in a demo here. I have AppSignal set up here. This is for the Planet Argon website production. And so you can see live, like, okay, everything is running smooth and there's a big spike here, something happening. And it's really easy to be like, oh no, like a really big spike. But one of the things I wanted to make sure people know is like you can look out 24 hours, 48 hours and see, okay, this is pretty consistently okay. This is a little bit weird. It's a little bit spiky. And then there's a big spike here. Okay, we need to look into this. We can look in Time Detective and see what's going on here. You can sort by 90th percentile, for example, or just the mean or the throughput and see what's coming up here. Or in the dashboard, you can look at latest open errors. And I wanted to kind of cue in on this one here. I can go in here. This is for something called Get Started, which is a page we previously had set up and don't any longer. I can look at samples and see like, oh, okay, there's quite a few samples of people trying to get started. Maybe we should address that. That's great. Let's look at what actually happened here. Slash get started. Just say there's nothing there for it to find. It's not happening very frequently, once every couple of days, maybe every couple hours. But anyway, you can get deeper, deeper, deeper. So yeah, I can see, oh, here it comes in. Someone tried to get to that page or a bot tried to get to that page and wasn't able to. They sent an error. I can get deep. Or I can set up a trigger and say like, okay, let's add a trigger. I want to see this spike right here. Error rate for web 33%. Okay, web, get specific on that. I want to alert when this is over 40%. If I want to try to get there, let's look at 48 hours. Yeah, I think that's okay. Let's do 10%. And then a warm up is always good for me. I like to put like maybe a 3-minute warm up cool down, and this is alerts. Error rate is over 12%. And I want to set it to the internal apps channel in Slack that we have set up. I can save a trigger, and now this trigger exists. And so every time this occurs, it'll send a Slack message through the notifier when the error rate is over 12%, which is pretty nice. All right. That was my quick presentation on AppSignal. There's a lot more to go into, but from a basic level, I wanted to communicate, even for non-technical stakeholders or non-technical project managers, it's really nice to be able to look at one page and see like, okay, everything seems to be running smoothly today, no problems. Or I don't know what this means. I should alert somebody else to take a look at this. And a developer can come in and really dig in to what they need to see. But are there any questions?
I don't see any questions yet, so if anybody does have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll wait for just a minute.
Autumn, do you have any questions about AppSignal?
I have a lot of questions about AppSignal.
Okay.
Longer than it would take in this webinar. All right. Well, thank you, Michael. That was super insightful to look at AppSignal and how to use it to make smarter decisions about app performance. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Remember, this was the kickoff session for Planet Argon Live, and we'll be back soon with more practical talks from our team. If you enjoyed this one, be sure to follow us here on LinkedIn so you don't miss the next episode. And we'll also be sharing the replay shortly in case you want to revisit anything, any of the topics, or share it with your team. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Planet Argon Live. Thank you, Michael.
Bye.